Another setback for Casey Anthony's defense team. Judge Belvin Perry denied a subpoena for photos that belong to a blogger named Joe Jordan. Now, Jordan has pictures of the vacant lot where the remains of Casey's daughter, Kaylee, were found. The judge was not convinced those pictures would actually reveal any meaningful evidence in the case. Casey is charged with first-degree murder in the 2008 death of her daughter, Kaylee. Her trial is set to start in May, and she faces the death penalty if she's convicted.
Sonni Abatta joining me now because Sonny's going to be taking over the afternoon shift.
Yes.
Since we are staying through the coverage, normally we would break for a court show, but not today because I think it was such compelling testimony on the stand this morning.
Yeah, really dramatic. Lee getting up there. I mean, we looked for this moment yesterday. Cindy got up there. We finally got that moment to sink our teeth into. And when Lee got back up today, that was even better.
And a lot of people surprised. That was one of the things we first talked about this morning, that Cindy Anthony was called back onto the stand today. Everybody thought, you know what, after the bombshell yesterday, after she talked about the chloroform, that we weren't going to see her back up again, and boom, there she was.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to talk more with Diana, too, because I've been watching you guys, of course, all morning. I keep an eye on what's happening.
You can't
yeah, we can't get away from this. Break it up. Diana, what impact, and forgive me if you've gone over this when I was driving in, it took me about 40 minutes to get here, but what you think what direction they're going in with Lee? I mean, we've established the strange family dynamic once or twice, or maybe more with Cindy, and all it's doing when they're talking to him is really ramming it down these jurors' throats that maybe this is a kind of screwed up situation in this family.
Well, I mean, I think that's the biggest bulk of what he's given the defense so far is, again, no matter what you believe happened, that 30 days, even if the jury ends up thinking that she had something to do somehow with her child's death, the behavior afterwards won't be so horrible, shocking, death penalty worthy if you get a fuller picture of how unconnected and disconnected this family was and some of the weird stuff that went on. So I think that was important.
If the jury recommends death, the judge can override that and give her life. So, you know, it really depends on where the jury goes ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they spent the first part of the defense spending the first part of their witnesses trying to poke holes in the physical evidence. As we've been saying, it's getting interesting now hearing from the family and seeing how they weave their theory into the cast of characters of the Anthony.
You said you were going to talk about sexual molestation by your client from her father and her brother, and they still haven't asked any questions about that or even talked about it.
Right. They spent the bulk of their time so far calling witnesses, trying to disprove some of the physical evidence that the state brought in. And I want to bring Brad back into this conversation, Brad, because we were chatting with you before this. We're starting to get into that realm now, into the, you know, perhaps weaving it all together, how the alleged sexual abuse caused Casey to kind of go off the tracks. Do you think at some point we hear from that mental health expert that the defense was trying to get in as a witness, and that sort of bolsters perhaps what the family will reveal was a little bit of dysfunction?
Well, I'm not sure which mental health expert we would hear from, because she was examined by 2 doctors and then the defense pulled them from their witness list. So who is going to testify other than Casey Anthony about it?
Well, they had the grief expert that they were trying to introduce as a witness early on.
That's absolutely right. But the problem is, and Judge Perry pointed this out, when Baez said, well, Judge, I may want to add this grief expert, Judge Perry pointed out that expert testimony is admissible only where it's going to help a jury understand a complicated or difficult issue. Now, we all know that people grieve differently. We've all grieved over even a pet. So whether or not the judge allows this testimony remains to be seen, and I'm sure that that's going to be a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, from a juror's perspective, you would hope they would bring someone in, like you said, that would fill in the blanks and would explain, because that 31 days is just this sort of huge issue here that people are having trouble accepting.
And the defense is and the defense, that's probably going to be one of their biggest hurdles in this case, is trying to get the jury to believe that, you know, this was somehow normal behavior.
Brad, I want to ask you, he circled with the telestrator the locations of those stains that he claims were in the trunk before Casey owned the car, but it wasn't the stain in question, right?
He sure did, Sonny. He circled 3 different spots, and none of them were the stain on the tire cover.
Yeah, so I'm sure, I mean, the jury probably picked up on that. They've been shown enough pictures, I would presume, to know relative to what's happening, which one they need to be concerned about.
Well, and you always want to know where you're going and what your witness is going to say. And if it's not going to make a point, don't go there. Don't waste the jury's time.
Oh, so you think that was a moment that perhaps the defense really didn't need to go into? Maybe they can't try to confuse the jurors, can they? I mean, that's unethical, right?
Well, You know, they throw enough mud against the wall, that's what happens.
You know what? I have to say, if I were a juror and I heard stain in a trunk, I mean, presuming the people aren't, you know, paint transporters, that there aren't many stains in people's trunks, so if I weren't paying close enough attention as a juror, perhaps I would confuse. And as she has been the entire trial, live outside of the courthouse, keeping an eye on every minute of what's happening inside. Shannon, wow, that was a moment. I mean, you got to be honest, we were waiting for something like that. We need a peek into Casey's mind and this family's world, and that was it.
Yeah, I think that explained to a lot of people that there was secret things going on in that family. It was hard to watch. It was hard to see Lee Anthony. He hasn't shown a lot of emotion. He's kind of a difficult witness. He's, you know, always been like that, at least with the media. He's a little standoffish. You just get the feeling, like through his testimony, there's just something they're trying to get at, but they're not getting at it. It almost seems like, what are they hiding?
And they missed the opportunity too, Shannon, I mean, the jurors heard even the question about the paternity of Kaylee. I'm sure they were shocked when they heard that, although I believe they went into sidebar shortly after that, so the jurors really didn't get to hear much discussion on it. Why not take the opportunity to, you know, either try, if you're the defense, try to pin that on him or ask him about George. It is his father too. Why just sort of skip that opportunity?
Then we got a whole nother situation.
Then we got a long day ahead of us, all of us, if that happens. Certainly would give a lot of people a lot of things to talk about. But Diana, let's get you back in. Why can't the state come up next during cross and ask that very question? Because if he says no, like most people anticipate he would, that kind of knocks down something out of the defense's theory.
This is about whether or not she murdered that child through aggravated child abuse that was atrocious, heinous, and cruel. That's what the statute says.
Right.
That's the law.
Right,
so let's
exactly.
stay with the law and not that we don't like her because she's a slut.
Right. I mean, hey, people have their opinions, but you can't. You're right. In a court of law, she's not charged for being an over partier or a crazy dancer or a girl who doesn't think enough to call police when her daughter goes missing. I guess that's another story. But as we said all along, our opinions don't matter. It's the opinions of those 12 people, those 12 jurors in that courtroom, and ultimately what they recommend to the judge. So, you know, it all comes down to that. I guess we can sit here and talk and represent different opinions all we want, but it is important. I think you have very aptly harped on the point that, you know, she's not convicted yet, and people need to give the defense credit, at least for doing the job that they are supposed to be doing. They're trying to get her off because that is their job. Like it or not, it's what they have to do. Party. Lots to talk about tonight, gentlemen, but I think we need to establish right off the bat that Martha Raddatz deserves some sort of medal for hopping in between really what seemed like a playground fight at times between these two vice presidential nominees. Steve, who won in your opinion?
Well, I think Joe Biden won, you know, especially when we start talking about issues like Medicare, where seniors are going to be affected and future seniors are going to be affected, moving back to the time when seniors had to choose between health care and food. When Americans start to see that clear distinction, they're going to come back to the Democratic Party. So
you've got to hop in there, though. Did it leave a bad taste in your mouth that Joe Biden was kind of jumping all over Paul Ryan at times? And then, John, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well.
You know, it's a debate, and these things happen. People go back and forth, and that's kind of the nature of the beast.
What do you think, John?
Well, I think Vice President Biden did seem kind of silly at times, laughing. I thought Paul Ryan showed a lot of poise. I thought for someone who's relatively inexperienced on the national stage, he did a very good job. Joe Biden has been in 18 vice presidential or presidential debates, and Paul Ryan has not, and I think he held his own. He went toe-to-toe, and ultimately, I thought he won.
The newsroom took a collective gasp. You know, Biden addressed the issue that the president did not address, which was the 47% comment that we thought for sure we would hear something about in the first presidential debate. It was an impactful moment for sure, whether or not you agree.
It was one of many, and I think he came out and said it. We've had it up to here, and I think it was clear. We talked to the Democratic National Party today, and they thought he would come out swinging, and I think he came out much more aggressive than the president. I think that was one of the telling moments where you saw that. Was
that a punch to the gut, John, the comment that Biden made on the 47%?
I don't think so. I think that was expected. The fact is, Mitt Romney cares about 100% of the people in this country, and he's looking to cut taxes across the board and cut out loopholes that would start to be cut out, and deductions that would start to be cut out at the higher levels, at the higher income levels. He's looking to strengthen small businesses, which really are the backbone of our economy. And he has a plan to do that. You know, and Steve, Ryan is known as the mathematician of Congress, so he does have that on his side. And when you hear a guy like him say the numbers just don't add up, people might tend to believe that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the numbers don't add up completely, but you know what the Republicans are trying to do is just give a pass to the wealthiest Americans who have been doing very, very well, and that's either going to explode the deficit or it's going to create tax increases for the middle class. I mean, this is basic math. Everybody can figure this out. If you cut taxes for the wealthy, somebody has to pick up the slack, or the deficit's going to go up. It's as simple as that.
We want to play a couple sound bites on Medicare, an issue of great importance here in Florida. Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
Give younger people, when they become Medicare eligible, guaranteed coverage options that you can't be denied, including traditional Medicare. Choose your plan, and then Medicare subsidizes your premiums. Not as much for the wealthy people, more coverage for middle-income people, and total out-of-pocket coverage for the poor and the sick. Choice and competition.
Any senior out there, ask yourself, do you have more benefits today? You do. If you're near the donut hole, you have $800, $600 more to help your prescription drug costs. You get wellness visits without copays. They wipe all of this out, and Medicare becomes insolvent in 2016.
Okay, John, I want to bring you in on that. You know, the Romney-Ryan camp has not been able to dodge this whole "it's a voucher system" explanation from the Obama side when it comes to Medicare. And frankly, that scares a lot of people who are of that age who need that care.
I'm glad you used that word "scare" because that's exactly what Vice President Biden was trying to do, is scare seniors into thinking that they're going to lose benefits, when really that is not the case at all. There's a concrete plan in place to ensure the benefits for senior citizens, but also to fix the Medicare system we have. Now we also need to remember that Obamacare is going to be cutting $716 billion from Medicare, which is substantial, and through that, seniors are going to be paying higher out-of-pocket expenses. All
right, Steve, I want to bring you in. We have about 10 seconds, then we're going to quickly wrap with Ryan. So what are your thoughts on this Medicare issue?
Look, this is a great country, and one of the reasons it's great is we do take care of our seniors. We honor them, their hard work they put in their whole lives. We make sure that they don't have to choose between food and medicine in their golden years. And this is exactly what this voucher plan would do. It would give seniors a fixed amount of money, and they'd have to go out into the private system and buy insurance from people whose only interest is in making a profit. It's not going to work, and it's going to cost seniors thousands of dollars.
All right, and Ryan, final question of the night. You know, what the presidential debate, the first one, lacked in energy and excitement, this one certainly made up for. Would you not agree?
Oh, without question, Sonni. I think you can't debate. The real winner tonight was the viewer and the voter. Both candidates got a chance to come out. In fact, a minute 45 difference in who spoke the most, and I think they did a good job of getting the topics out there, much better than the first debate.
Absolutely. Ryan Elijah, John Martinez, and Steve Barnes, we appreciate all of your time tonight. Thanks for coming in. All right, Arnold Schwarzenegger did it. Now actor Alec Baldwin could be the next one to make the jump from acting to politics. We told you first. Baldwin telling CNN he's very interested in a future political run, but he also added it would be, quote, painful for him to leave acting right now. Probably painful to leave the paychecks as well. Baldwin has long been an outspoken supporter of the Democratic Party. Also, as the movie line goes, there's no crying in baseball, but there is crying in politics. At least there was a little today. The new Speaker of the House seen shedding a few tears. So when is it appropriate to show your emotions when it comes to work? Well, it's not the first time he's shown his emotions in public, and probably not the last either. The new Speaker of the House, Republican John Boehner, shedding a tear or two today. We first saw the tears on his way to the podium, then before actually stepping to the mic, as you saw there, he had to use his hanky to wipe his eyes. Boehner also seen crying on election night when he realized he would become the new House Speaker. All right, so what's the big deal with a guy shedding a few tears here and there? Here to talk more about this is Kimberly Wacko, psychotherapist. Kimberly, thanks for being in tonight.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm Italian. I have no problem with me or men or animals or whatever showing emotion, but for some reason, a lot of people have a problem with seeing men display their emotions publicly. Why is that?
Well, it's not really socially acceptable in the male culture to show emotions because it's being vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you're at risk of being taken advantage of.
There's certainly a double standard that a lot of people talk about too. Women that tend to show emotion publicly might be a little chastised as well too. Is there some sort of balance you tell your patients to try and keep as far as showing your emotions publicly, whether it be in a workplace or just out somewhere in general?
Well, definitely. There's a time and a place to show your emotions, and if you are starting to lose that, there's a time to be able to remove yourself from the situation so you can regain contain your emotions so that you can show that you are capable of running your position.
What do you personally think about him crying on a few separate occasions?
Well, in a person that's in a power position, you would want to show that you can handle a position of that caliber.
But clearly, some very big things happening in his life too. So I guess we have to give him that when we consider it. One final question for you. We know obviously you don't treat him, but there's some chemical things that can actually be at play when people get a little emotional as well later in life. Explain that to us.
Yes, there's this thing called andropause that is very similar to what women go through when they go through menopause. They lose testosterone levels that can cause them to be a little bit more emotional than they would normally be.
And again, we are not saying that is the case with the Speaker of the House here, just saying that this tends to happen sometimes in older men. Okay, Kimberly Walker, psychotherapist, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
We're having this debate as to
no.
I don't think it's a huge deal. All right, with regards to the work that Congress is actually doing, the Senate is debating changes to the use of the filibuster, but will likely not decide until after a 2-week recess. The House voting on the health care law repeal next Wednesday. Now is real estate attorney Matt Englert to tell us more about some small mistakes you can avoid when you're trying to refinance or maybe purchase your first home. Matt, it really sounds hard to believe that something as small as, $10, $20, that nominal amount can really affect refinancing or purchasing of a home. But you say this happens quite a bit?
It does happen quite a bit. It happens with medical bills and it happens with other types of bills. Everyone should pull their credit at least once a year and see if there's anything on there that's not accurate. If it's not accurate, you can actually report that to the credit bureau and they will get with the entity that actually reported it incorrectly. Now, if they don't fix it in a reasonable amount of time, you can actually file a lawsuit based on the amount of money that you lost because you're actually paying more for credit than you otherwise should be.
Tell us a few experiences your clients have had, some maybe unforeseen hurdles that they've come up against. We've heard stories of people having a $10 dentist bill that they probably looked at once and forgot. Does that happen quite a bit?
It does happen a lot. We have a lot of clients that come to us and they want to improve their credit score, and once we pull their credit, we actually look at it and see that there are a lot of things on there that aren't accurate. It could be a small bill as low as what you said, $10, $15, and it could be thousands of dollars in some instances. And what we do is we can report that to the credit bureau, and if the creditor does not respond in a certain amount of time, it automatically comes off your credit report, so your score will actually boost right up. And there are attorneys out there that do this type of work. However, be careful because there are also companies out there that are not law firms, that are credit repair companies, and they oftentimes are scams. So you have to be real careful in this area.
All right, and as always, be your own best asset trying to do your research. How often, quickly, Matt, should people be checking their credit scores? Should we be checking even if there's not a huge purchase in our future?
Absolutely. We always tell all of our clients to check your credit report at least once a year, and it's fairly easy to do. You can go on the internet and do it, and it doesn't cost much money.
Okay, Matt Englert, real estate attorney, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Walters is news manager with TMZ. Mike, the interview that was heard around the world, Charlie Sheen talking bad about his show's creators, 2.5 Men. What prompted this whole thing?
Well, I think there's been bad blood between these two guys for a long time, but since all production shut down, Charlie was hospitalized, and then he feels the executives at 2.5 Men were forcing him to go to rehab even though he didn't want to. Now, you guys, everyone heard some of the stuff he started to say, and on TMZ we published an interview with Charlie saying basically, I can't say a lot of it on television, but calling him a stupid little man, a couple cuss words, that Chuck Lorre basically was a bad person, and this prompted them to shut down 2.5 Men. Now, remember, 2.5 Men is a really popular, high ratings comedy television show, and for them to shut down 8 episodes is a big deal, and that's what happened after Charlie did the interview.
Mike, accusations that Charlie was being anti-Semitic when he made some of these comments, do you get the impression that that's the kind of guy he is? You talked to him.
Well, no, I didn't actually. I asked that because a lot of people said that, and this is what he told me. He said, look, his real name is Chaim Levine. It was his Jewish born name, and I wanted to put a statement out to the actual man, to the person, not the TV BS persona of Chuck Lorre, the guy who's uber successful and wealthy. Right. He wanted to talk to the man, and that's the way, at least he explained it to me.
Do you understand, though, why some people might say, look, you make $2 million or whatever it is per episode. You're clearly in in need of some help. Why are you fighting back? I mean, it's really hard to get on Charlie's side for some people out there.
No, you know what? You're 100% right. The problem with Charlie Sheen is there is a lot of people below him. There's a crew of 200 people that rely on him. There is people like that. But remember, he's talking about the people above him. So you're talking about the guy, Chuck Lorre, who made $500 million on this show. Mm-hmm. Yes, Charlie made $100 million. He made 5 times that. Warner Brothers and CBS, they probably made 5 times that. So he's talking about the people that are above him that made more money than him. And he does feel like he carried that show on his back for all these years. He's the talent. He's the guy that's the star of the show. You know, again, I'm not trying to just defend Charlie Sheen, but the reality is he feels that they backed him into a corner. They feel the vice versa, same way about Charlie. His antics were horrible and it caused them a lot of pain. So, you know, I'm not really sure who was at fault, right, you know, in this situation.
It is a messy situation.
And we start with this news alert. One of the suspects involved is now in custody, and it's a woman. 2
other suspects, though, still on the run tonight, but the victim says she's actually forgiven the people who attacked her. Fox 35's Daryl Nail live outside the victim's home in Merritt Island. Daryl, it's a pretty bold move to make to forgive them already. Talk about low. A robbery suspect busts into an Orlando store, punches a woman twice, and police believe this might not be his first time at the rodeo either. It's our top story in tonight's Nightly News Wrap. Fox 35's Shannon Butler has the details.
It looks like it's possible this man could be a serial robber. Orlando police have already connected this man to a robbery at Wendy's and also at a Circle K. That surveillance video told quite a bit of the story, but now a woman has come forward to say that she was also robbed by that same man.
A much nicer tone at the first and only debate between the District 10 congressional candidates, Republican incumbent Dan Webster and his Democratic challenger, former Orlando Police Chief Val Demings. The hot topics: Social Security, Medicare, jobs, and taxes. And then they addressed those nasty ads made by Democrats in Washington targeting Webster.
I've never had a drink with anyone, private or none, and it was depicted that I did. I've never been in a cigar lounge or whatever that was. It's not a lounge. I spent no money on it.
I would suggest that you check the record. The congressman, then Speaker of the House, spent taxpayer dollars to renovate his office. This is what the ad says.
But no matter how nice each side was, they're not too humble to claim victory. Both say they won. Zimmerman appears in a Seminole County courtroom looking noticeably different. Check out the split screen images. Comparing the pictures, you can see Zimmerman has, well, gained some weight since the last time he appeared in court. Zimmerman's brother Robert blamed the extra pounds on the fact that George has been in hiding and simply can't get out to get exercise. Now Zimmerman is waiting to stand trial for second-degree murder in the February shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. A judge today granted Zimmerman's defense team access to Martin's school records and social media information, including his Facebook account and Twitter information.
Everything that he has said and done, though it sounds horrible to come before you and say, I really want to go after the victim's reputation, that is simply what the Sixth Amendment tells us we have to do.
Now the judge's decision to allow the defense access to those elements not really sitting well with the Martin family. Mike, they managed to get back to the topic of the economy, even though the focus was to be solely on foreign policy. Getting back to that point, though, you had talked to several people I know after the debates asking about the performance, but a note that both of these candidates struck was making the point that they do not want to put more boots on the ground. They do not want our troops involved in another war unless absolutely necessary. They actually met on quite a few points more than expected. Was that a surprise to you, especially for Governor Romney, who's considered to be the more hawkish person when it comes to foreign policy and defense? Governor Charlie Crist, former governor of Florida. Governor Crist, you, if anyone, know how important of a state, yet unpredictable of a state Florida is, especially when it comes to a presidential election. What kind of trends are you noticing right now? And frankly, where does the president need to improve?
Well, I think it's trending toward the president right now. I think after the debate the other night, the great points that President Obama made, talking about the importance of Medicare and not turning it into a voucher program, as Paul Ryan wants to do, making sure that we protect Social Security, that we do the kinds of things that Floridians care about deeply. I think the trending is starting to go President Obama's way, and I think that's good for Florida and good for America.
Governor Romney and Paul Ryan, though, have contested the use of that word voucher when it comes to their Medicare plan. They say, frankly, it would give people more options.
Well, I think what people want is something they can count on. And with President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, you get a Medicare program that's not going to be tinkered with. And I think the thought that that is something that both Romney and Ryan want to do with Medicare is tinker around with it. That is disheartening and not the kind of comfort that I think many of our fellow Floridians want with a program that's so important to their future.
Governor Christ, what do you say to people who are a little disappointed in the way the president handled the attack in Libya? There was a big moment in the debate a couple of days ago when the president finally took time to address what happened, but yet never really said that he denied at any point that it was an act of terror.
State Senator Gary Siplin says he wants to form a special committee to investigate the Trayvon Martin shooting. Siplin says he's concerned about what he claims is a troubling culture overall in Sanford.
Black folks in Sanford realize why they haven't arrested Mr. Zimmerman, because that's how they get treated all along. When they are the victims, nothing happens. If they shoot somebody, then they get arrested right away. I do think there is a plantation culture in Sanford, Florida.
We continue to break exclusive details in the Trayvon Martin case. More coverage tonight at 10 and 11 in our exclusive interview with Zimmerman's legal advisor. For instant updates in this story anytime, you can also go to our website, myfoxorlando.com. Meantime, lawyers for Casey Anthony and the woman suing her battling it out in a Central Florida courtroom. Anthony's attorneys want this civil case to be thrown out entirely. Holly Bristow joins us live from the Orange County Courthouse. Holly, the judge has a different idea of a timeline. She's really taking her time making a decision here, right?
She is certainly taking her time, as you said, Sonny.
It sounds like something that you'd hear about in communist Russia or China.
Well, you know, you might say that for a normal case, but Larry, considering this was so high profile and considering the fact that Judge Perry had to lay out very clear restrictions, not only on this free speech zone, but on anyone who was in that courtroom just because of that attention, don't you understand why perhaps Judge Perry was a little angrier than a normal circumstance might permit?
Well, judges have an obligation to treat every individual fairly and not discriminate because there might be a particularly high-profile case at issue. And so, you know, the First Amendment protects all speech equally, and I believe that this gentleman had the right to distribute the literature that he was distributing. Now, there is a court order in place. The validity of the court order is questionable. It's being challenged in various different places. And
true or false, though, he could have derailed a trial that would have cost the public and enraged public at that a whole lot more money. He could have caused a mistrial, and also again, the rules were clearly laid out. I mean, the judge is within his rights to create those restrictions, isn't he?
Well, certainly judges have the right to issue court orders and to try to keep decorum in their courtroom and so forth, but this court order went outside the courtroom to the courthouse grounds, and that's what makes it different. You're telling people what they can and cannot say outside of the courthouse.
Yeah, I acknowledge it was different, but there's not even a part of you who thinks perhaps this may have been an exception given the level of attention alone and maybe even the physical security, the physical safety of the people involved. These jurors had to have been protected from most people and circumstances, wouldn't you say?
Well, the great thing about the First Amendment is that we don't make exceptions.
Right.
And that's what makes our country very different from any other. And I don't believe an exception was warranted in this case, but the judge's ruling was what it was. We have to respect the law, and until it's overturned on appeal, it's going to be presumptively valid.
Well, all good points and all taken, just like a good debate here. Larry Walters, thank you for coming in. And as far as the jurors who actually served on that trial, again, their names will be released in October. Fox 35 will keep you updated on everything regarding Casey Anthony's release from jail. Larry Walters is a First Amendment attorney here to shed more light on this Mark Schmitter situation. Larry, I got to ask you first off, what do you think of Judge Perry's sentence for this man?
Well, just so everybody understands what happened here, a man was locked up in a cage for 5 months for distributing literature about juror rights in the courthouse square.
Right, okay, but
that sounds like something that you'd hear about in communist Russia or China.
Well, you know, you might say that for a normal case, but Larry, considering this was so high profile and considering the fact that Judge Perry had to lay out very clear restrictions, not only on this free speech zone, but on anyone who was in that courtroom just because of that attention, don't you understand why perhaps Judge Perry was a little angrier than a normal circumstance might permit?
Mike, thanks. Even though Senator Rubio is just taking office, there is plenty to do. A former Central Florida congressman tells us what's ahead for him.
Senators also have the power to hold legislation. Just one person can hold things for 3 days. So he's going to have a lot of power to stop things. He's not going to have a heck of a lot of power to pass legislation.
That Rick Keller, of course. There's no doubt Rubio does have a lot of star power right now. Surely has the attention of the nation as well. For more on what Rubio faces, we have Deirdre McNabb in our studios tonight. She's president of the League of Women Voters here in Florida. Deirdre, thanks for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We know that Rubio has already had his fair share of national exposure. He was on the cover of several magazines, including Time. What are people expecting of him as a senator, not only Floridians, but also people nationwide?
Well, I think he has the challenge of representing a state that is extremely diverse, very representative of the American diversity, and it's also a very centrist state, Florida. So he is up there in Washington now, facing some very big challenges. Some of those issues include trying to cut back the deficit while also stimulating the jobs and the economy. Second, the other area that is going to be facing him as our U.S. Senator is going to be health care. And we just heard earlier some of his thoughts on that, but I think the American people are going to be looking for some new ideas, not just trying to change what's already been passed, but trying to improve things. And then thirdly, a very hot issue is going to be immigration, and I think that's an issue that's going to be watched very carefully in the state of Florida.
And that was what I was going to ask you, these sort of banner issues. Does he grasp to these? He obviously stands to gain something individually for being a face in the Republican Party, for example, trying to overturn the health care law. What does he stand to benefit and lose by being at the forefront of a lot of these pushes by the Republican Party?
Well, right now I think Congress is a lot like a rodeo. We have a lot of new contestants there. We've got some very, very tough events and issues that these particularly freshmen and in both the House and the Senate are trying to grapple with. He's trying to stand out, you know, assuming he is interested in a national position. He's got to stand out, both in terms of coming up with new ideas and being seen as a articulate and clear spokesperson that is going to appeal to the center of America.
We only have time for a yes or no here, but do you see a presidential run in his future, maybe even years down the line?
I certainly wouldn't rule it out. He comes from a very large state, and he's certainly got an opportunity, but he's got to prove himself first.
Deirdre McNabb, president from the League of Women Voters here in Florida. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
New details tonight. Church and state may be heading to court in Polk County. That's because of what controversial Sheriff Grady Judd did recently.
Yeah, he donated some basketball hoops from the Polk County Jail to 8 local churches, and now a Florida atheists group is demanding to know more, and they could end up suing. Atheists of Florida say it's a violation of the separation of church and state. Sheriff Judd says he brought those hoops to the churches with donations, not county money. Now, the atheist group wants the sheriff's office to reveal the value of the equipment, how much it cost to move, and why they decided to donate those hoops to churches rather than to a park or school. John Kiefer is from the group Atheists of Florida. John, thanks for being with us tonight. Let's start off with what exactly is the issue here with donating these items to churches if, in the end, kids are getting them anyway?
The issue, Sonny, is the problem that this is taxpayer property from Polk County, and Sheriff Judd has taken this taxpayer property and decided that he was going to direct it to these 8 churches. This is clearly unconstitutional by the Florida Constitution, and also it violates the U.S. Constitution. He can donate it to parks and schools, but churches, it crosses the line.
Well, now his explanation was it just happened to be the closest nonprofit in the vicinity of the jail, so that's why he was doing that. I mean, you're going to have a lot of people asking, what's the harm? And is it worth going after something that, I guess, in the scope of things, probably will end up being kind of small?
Right. Well, again, we put out a Freedom of Information Act request. We're going to find out exactly how small that property value is. One of the goalposts that showed up at the Turning Point Church looked brand new. In fact, the net looked as if there was never a ball went through it. So we're asking for an accounting of how much he paid for it, purchase orders, members, and additionally, the sheriff's department was deployed. People were paid to go out to this church and supervise the inmates.
Let me ask you this: take it away from one group of kids. I mean, you're going to disappoint a whole new group just to give it to another one. Is it worth it in the end?
Well, the problem is not all the kids can play on it. You know, the sheriff says, well, if anybody wants to go there and play, they can. Well, this is private property, and that's not his say that who can go on a private property. So that could be a challenge. If he wants atheists, he said the atheists could go out there and actually play on the property. Well, guess what?
It might be different,
what about? Yeah, exactly. That's not, it's not going to happen.
We're out of time. John Kiefer from Atheist of Florida, we do thank you for your time. Breaking news tonight about Florida's bullet train. If you thought the project was dead, think again. The feds actually just told Governor Rick Scott they're giving him another whole week to reconsider passing on that $3 billion in federal money. Fox 35's Mike Simon live at Orlando City Hall right now with the latest and unexpected extension here, Mike. A proposal in Brevard County tonight to make lifeguards seasonal. One commissioner says having them on the beach year-round is just a waste of money. Fox 35's Daryl Nail live in Brevard County with more details on the plan. Hey, Daryl. Daryl, we know there have been some unfortunate incidents, drownings, perhaps deaths on the beach during the winter when lifeguards aren't around as much. Does the commissioner believe that tourism at the Brevard beaches could be hurt by incidents like those?
You make a good point. In 2007, there were many drownings that spurred the putting in the program year-round. But the commissioner says that he does not believe that lifeguards drive tourism, and if someone does, particularly somebody in the tourism industry, then they should help pay for them during the winter.
All right. Daryl Nail live in Brevard County. Daryl, thanks. Now, the Brevard County Commission is going to take up those proposed changes to lifeguard duties next month. Authorities could be close to arresting the men who attacked a woman with a crowbar. She caught them burglarizing her home yesterday. She actually got out of her car to write down their license plate. That's when she says one man took a crowbar to her head. Now, she doesn't want to show her face on TV, understandably, but she says she should have left the scene a little earlier.
And I wouldn't have gotten out of the car if I had the opportunity to do it again.
A fireman in trouble with the law tonight, big time. He's accused of setting a fellow firefighter on fire. We're going to tell you what started it all and what charges he is now facing coming up. And you could say they're crushing the American dream to own a home, I guess, at least in some cases. One major bank trying to require home buyers to put down 30%. You're going to have the details next.
A Washington State family collecting their Mega Million winnings, half of a $380 million prize. Officials in Idaho still waiting, though, for the other winner to step forward.
We're happy for them.
We're totally happy for them.
Good for them. And this jackpot, be nice, ensures that life will never be the same for this couple.
4, 8, 15, 25, 47, 42. Wow. And I thought, oh, my good Lord in heaven.
And with those Mega Millions numbers matching, the McCullough family of Washington State is issued one of those really big checks with a really big amount. But the check hasn't been cashed yet.
My wallet's empty, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, $8.
The couple's winning numbers were based on their birthdays.
Last Sunday, we were in the store, and I told Jim, I says, let's get some tickets and use a card and put our numbers down. And so that's what we did. And it worked.
Double checking those numbers is a moment they'll never forget.
I says, look at this and look at that. She looked and she studied and she looked and she studied and she looked at me and screamed. Tears started flowing down, and I looked at her and I started crying, and I thought, and all she could say was, "Is this real? Is this real?" And I says, I pinched myself already.
Now the pair, who have a growing family, say they'll be keeping that cash close and making it last.
What this means to me is that the legacy is going to go generation after generation after generation. My kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, and their children also will never have to worry, because we're not going to blow this.
Good for them. The $380 million jackpot, again, they're splitting that, is actually the second highest in the drawing's history.
Okay, we feel good for that. They're a nice couple. All right, coming up new tonight at 5.
Mark Mills is a political analyst. Mark, what do you think about the lukewarm reception, especially on the issue of immigration that Mitt Romney got today?
Yeah, I think it was expected, considering it was a national Latino audience. But if you look at the campaigns and how they're appealing to Hispanic voters, it's a very different strategy. Obama is talking to Hispanic voters, hoping to draw Hispanic voters based on immigration. Romney is talking about economics. Romney talked enough today about some immigration proposals just to say that he's talked about immigration, but this is a different approach.
And it's interesting that the point that he chose to bring up, at least at one time in the conference, was his belief in the building of the border,
Right.
the fence along the border. Do you think that was a good way to introduce perhaps his ideas on immigration, like you said, to a national audience?
Yeah, it'll appeal to his constituency, but it's nothing new. Romney has talked mostly about economics. He talked about the high rate of Hispanic unemployment. He's hoping to attract Latinos based on the economy. Let Obama talk about immigration, but Romney doesn't appear to be suckered into this idea that he's got to propose some grandiose immigration plan.
And we know the president will be at that very conference tomorrow. Do you expect to hear more about his recent mandate regarding immigration, or is this an opportunity for him to sort of expand that platform even more?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for him to expand the platform even more. This is a very tight race. In Florida, Hispanics may make up 13 to 15% of the race, of the vote, in a very, very tight campaign. So I expect to see Obama talking more about immigration, appealing to Hispanics, more on immigration specifics than Romney would.
And one final question. We have seen numerous visits by the president. Even in the past couple of months, I think it was 2 at Disney.
That's right.
Of course, Mitt Romney's there today, was in Central Florida just last week.
That's right.
How many more of these visits are we going to see as we approach?
Well, we haven't seen anything yet. Florida is a battleground state. I-4 is ground zero in the fight for Florida. We're going to see a lot of the president, a lot of Romney, a lot of Republicans and Democrats by the time November rolls around.
Okay. Mark Mills, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doctors say it is about to get even worse.
Hate to tell you, kids are heading back to school after the holiday break, and of course that means symptoms could be spreading from the home front to the classrooms. Joining us live now to talk more about this is Dr. Tim Hendricks from CentraCare. Dr. Hendricks, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
What have you been seeing in your centers? Have you been seeing more cases of flu than this time last year?
Yeah, definitely about a month early compared to the previous years. You know, last year was kind of an unusual year because we had a real early flu season, meaning swine flu, which hit in the middle of fall. And then it kind of tapered off by the time January came. But when you look at seasonal flu, it usually peaks in February. So we're about a month early, and seeing a lot of cough and runny nose, upper respiratory infections, and then people miserable with flu symptoms, high fever and body aches.
Yeah, it's miserable. We were mentioning tons of people sick in our newsroom. You hear the sniffles and the nose blowing.
I'm hearing a little bit behind me, yeah.
Be careful. Use hand sanitizer before you leave. Hey, I wanted to ask you, we've been dealing with some interesting strains of the flu. You mentioned swine flu, bird flu over the past 3 years. No unusual or unique strains that we've been seeing in great numbers this year so far, right?
No. The reassuring thing is that we've got a really good match between the influenza vaccine, what we were prepared for in terms of the vaccine, and what's actually out there. So it looks like the vaccine's going to protect you this year against what's commonly out there. We're seeing a little bit of H1N1 or swine flu still lingering, but something called H3N2, which is a common seasonal flu that we actually have in the vaccine.
Okay, you guys suggest, like you said, if you have anywhere from 2 to 3 symptoms, try to treat them now so you're not actually laid out for weeks on end. What are the early signs that people can look out for here?
Your biggest indicator is a rapid onset of a high fever, usually 102, 103, and just feeling miserable. You get up in the morning, you go to work, and next thing you know, you're just down for the count. So it's body aches, high fever, cough, and sore throat are your typical symptoms that are going to cluster together. So if you have those symptoms, get into your doctor, get into CentraCare, because within 48 hours of the onset of symptoms, you can start an antiviral like Tamiflu or Relenza and shorten the course substantially so you can get back on your feet and get back to work.
You can't avoid it entirely, but you can shorten it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, one quick question just for a few seconds. Those vitamin C supplements that we see just about everywhere, are they worth it, or is that not going to do much for you?
Not a big believer in vitamin C and all the supplements and echinacea and everything else. You know what I prescribe to? Getting rest, letting your immune system take care of itself, and you'll get over it eventually.
Getting extra rest is never bad advice. Dr. Tim Hendricks from CentraCare, thanks so much for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Thrill after a long day of shopping, you get weighed down by bags, so you go to your car, throw a few in the trunk, and head back out. Well, now police say thieves are watching you do just that and stealing people's newly bought Apple computers.
Deputies say these crooks had a system in place and would use it at the Florida Mall, the Festival Bay Mall, and the mall at Millennia. They would follow unsuspecting shoppers back to their cars, watch them unload pricey Apple products like an iPhone or an iPad into the car. Then when the shoppers left, break into the vehicles and steal them. Osceola and Orange County deputies arrested Adrian Terrell and Alexis Hernandez on multiple counts of theft.
The mother of a Dr. Phillips High School student who was allegedly hazed, the student was. The mom is now speaking out. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Fryer.
And I'm Sonni Abatta. Rena Denson's attorney says she did not drive her car onto a football field and try to hit any of the people allegedly responsible for hazing her son. Her attorney held a news conference today. She is not guilty, she says, and they're preparing for a trial. Denson charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, which is a felony that could land her some serious jail time. Fox 25's Shannon Butler has more.
Rena Denson cried today as her lawyers told the media she did not try to hurt anyone. Driving her Jeep onto the field at Dr. Phillips High School after she found out her son Darian was stuffed in a garbage can by several football players.
It's an unfortunate incident that stems from something else. It stems from my client's son being beaten at school.
Her lawyers said they are going over the case trying to build a defense. They would not allow Denson to speak today, but she did admit to me months ago that she did drive her car onto the field but never intended to hurt anyone. She was just trying to talk to the students that were on the field by walking over to them.
Shannon, thanks. God does have some big challenges ahead of him, especially job creation and boosting the housing market. We talked with Stephen Moore, a senior economics writer with the Wall Street Journal today.
He can't afford to fail. I mean, Florida has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country right now, tragically. It has one of the highest home foreclosure rates. You've got to get that real estate turned around. But one of the points that Rick has made that I think is really so true is, you know, if you get the economy turned around a little bit here, then real estate is going to come back. People are going to want to buy homes. They're going to want to invest in commercial real estate. And that creates a kind of positive reinforcement effect that could bring back the boom days of Florida that we saw in the 1980s and 1990s.
More additive. Scott succeeds in running state government like a business, like he claims to want to do. Other states could end up following his lead.
Good evening. I'm Bob Fryer.
And I'm Sonni Abatta. We're talking about former Oviedo councilman and head of the Republican Party in the state, Jim Greer. He's facing 6 felony counts tonight, including money laundering from his time in charge of the Florida GOP. Fox 35's Mike Sinan was in the courtroom today. He has more on what Greer doesn't want the public to know about just yet.
What we learned today in court from Jim Greer is that he plans on writing a book, a tell-all book about the Republican Party. As far as the state's concerned, it's no secret. They plan on using the outline of that book at trial.
It's highly likely we would utilize this material at the time of trial.
But Jim Greer says the outline of his book is a trade secret and privileged information. The former party chair strolled out of court silently, only smiling a couple of times as he was peppered with questions. He was arrested last year on charges of frauding Republican donors and the party by funneling some of the cash the party raised to himself through a secret company. Assistant statewide prosecutor Michael Williams was tight-lipped after this morning's hearing.
Until the judge rules one way or the other as far as what the status of those materials are, I can't really comment on them. And in addition to that, I can't really comment on a pending case as to what we're going to do at trial or not going to do.
Judge Mark Lubet is going to read through the 16-page outline and then decide whether or not the public will get to see it before trial. The case is a long way from trial. The next status hearing on the case won't come until April. Mike Sinan, Fox 35 News.
Now, the judge says Greer's trial will not start until the fall at the very earliest. In the meantime, Greer and his lawyers would not say what that book would be called. An update tonight on a story that's really shocked the campus of UCF. Police have found the car belonging to a dead student. Saleha Huda's car was found late last night right near the Gainesville Raceway. The 21-year-old UF cheerleader was found dead December 30th. Her body badly burned. Police will continue their investigation, and they hope someone who saw that car in the days leading to her death might come forward. And finally tonight, 2 new accordion-style buses for Lynx. They come with a whole lot more space, but also a bigger price tag. So did we really need them? Fox 35's Mike Sinan has more.